Next guest is a numbers guy, and we wanted to see if he will look under the hood for us. He's a big guy about the data. Dan, thanks for coming on the show. Dan Geltrude, thank you for being on.
Hey, Scott, sorry you can't see me, but my voice will be clear.
All right. So you heard me rattle off those numbers and those figures. Where do you stand about that report on Friday? We went over it last Friday, but even after the weekend, I don't think there's anything clearer.
Well, I look at it this way in one word. It's totally overrated, and I'll tell you why. Nearly 60% of the increase in those jobs, well, they were from healthcare, 67,000, government, 52,000, and restaurants, 42,000. Now, when you're looking at 60% of the increase in jobs coming from those three areas, well, you want to know something? That's not so great. And then when you factor in the points you were making before, so in December and January, they revised those numbers down by 167,000 jobs. Come on now. I mean, you know, I've done quite a bit of auditing in my day, Scott, right? And I look at this and I say, who's auditing these numbers? You know, you put these numbers out and you say, oh, well, just kidding. They're revised down. That doesn't work for me.
Right, and that it's happening so much so now that I think that, you know, when you and I were younger, at least when I was doing the job on a daily basis, standing in the pits, thrashing it out, this non-farm jobs number was almost arguably one of the biggest numbers of the month. And I think a lot of us older guys still look at it that way. But if you really look at the data, it's become so unreliable that it's almost not worth even getting that, right? And plus, when you factor in the fact that we only about half of the respondents, maybe a little bit more than over half, don't even reply to the government survey.
Right. It's not reliable. And here's where the problem comes in, right? The Federal Reserve is so data dependent. They're making these decisions based upon the data that you and I are talking about. How reliable is it? Look, part-time jobs are increasing. Well, so what? That means people aren't making enough in one job that maybe they have to have 2 or 3 part-time jobs. And how about this? When you figure in real unemployment, Scott, right? Like the people who stop looking for work, that number's at 7.3%. So the rosy picture is simply not there. Now, as I said, the Fed is data dependent, but I still think that the Fed is not going to cut rates anytime soon. And that's because they actually believe that jobs are still increasing, which they're not.
Well, they're part of the whole thing, the cabal. But you know, you're right. And to your point, when you've got people making less money because they're only now working part time, I gave you that stat: 920-some thousand jobs, part-time jobs created. We lost 285,000 full-time jobs. So those people are now making less at a time where they need to make more because inflation is still robbing them blind. Correct?
Oh, absolutely. In other words, Scott, they are being taxed because inflation is a tax, right? It's a sales tax. They're getting taxed more, making less. Bad formula. That's why we're starting to see, how about this, on the credit reports, right? You see credit scores going down. Why? People are taking on more debt, and they can't make timely payments. So when you look at what I consider to be good data, it tells the whole story of what's out there. The economy is not as strong as some people are touting that it is.
And you brought this up at the top of the show. A lot of these jobs created. I mean, look, last year the government was one of the best people that was making jobs, 53,000 a month. That was double the year before, 26,000 a month. So the government was also spending like crazy, like I said, with that GDP number to buy growth. But it's all fake. It's not real, true, good, common growth from the bottom up. And that's my problem, is that we're creating debt to get this growth, and we're going deeper and deeper in debt, and the growth isn't even anywhere near what we need to get for the money that we're spending. Our bang for the buck is horrible. You said it, I think, on our show. We spend $2.40 to buy $1 worth of growth. That doesn't add up.
No, it doesn't. You know what it's like, Scott? It's like going out, taking a loan, right? You put the money in the bank and you say, look how rich I am. Well, you need to look at the other side of the equation. It's the borrowing number that's so critical. And it's not just the country. It's Americans. Everybody is increasing that personal debt number. And with credit cards, I saw inching up to close to 30% in some cases. That's insane. That's a hole you could never dig out of.
You're right, and to your point, I mean, it's only getting worse. And you know what? I feel like the U.S. government spends just like the American consumer spends. They're both on that same track. They're parallel spenders. So I appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much.